Hey, we mentioned last week that we're honored to be voting members of the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. I already mentioned to you on the side that this ballot was really strong and really tough to narrow down.
Yeah, that it was. So many great candidates on there. And boy, we had our work cut out for us. But, we figured it out. We got our ballots in. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we have a great guest in Jeff Kirsch, the media director for the Hall of Fame. He's going to tell us all about the ballot and the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. So, Jeff, welcome to Philly Pressbox Radio. It's your first time. I don't know what took us so long.
It is. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, guys. It's an honor.
Well, Jeff, before we talk about the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame and this year's nominees, let's talk a little bit about you, Jeff.
Right.
Where'd you grow up, and what is your Philly sports fandom story? Any particular great memories?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in Northeast Philly, Somerton section to be specific, right on the verge of where the city hits the suburbs, both Montgomery and Bucks County. Got hooked on sports at a very early age, primarily due to my father and my maternal grandfather. So he was an original Flyers season ticket holder. I was the oldest of his 7 grandchildren, and he started taking me to hockey games at a very early age. So got hooked on sports at an early age, and hockey very specifically. Some of my earliest memories are going to Flyers games in the mid-'80s. I was at one of the finals games in 1987 against that incredible Oilers team that I think ended up with, 9 or 10 Hall of Famers, including Gretzky, Messier, you name it. In fact, I was at the infamous game when Ron Hextall may have slashed someone on the Oilers. I happened to be right behind there. I think it was game 4. That was his rookie year, which he subsequently was suspended for 8 games at the start of the next year. So,
yeah.
Well, Jeff, you're a lifelong Flyers fan, which means you have not had an opportunity to see a Stanley Cup. Oh. You have seen an NBA championship, a World Series championship, and a Super Bowl championship. No hoisting of the cup.
No hoisting of the cup. And in fact, my grandfather, so I was born, let me think about this. I was born 3 days before they won that cup in 1974. And I came home from the hospital the day of the parade. So my grandfather liked to joke that when I was born, the whole city of Philadelphia celebrated. So, of course, they won that cup that first year, and then they won the next year. We've been back to the finals 6 times since. And the really sad thing is, if you go back and look at the chronology, every team they've lost to has been a dynasty. They lost to the Canadiens in 76. They lost to the Islanders in 80, the Oilers in 85 and 87, then the Red Wings in 97. And the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks. That was the first of 3. So I can remember this stuff like it was yesterday, and I couldn't tell you what I had for lunch today, but that's just the way my brain works with the Flyers.
Well, Jeff, you're clearly a Philly sports fan through and through. How do you end up working for the Philly Sports Hall?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to my dad. So I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that he became a volunteer for the Hall of Fame. And if I remember the story correctly, he was semi-retired at the time. And my mother saw an ad, I think, in the Northeast Times that the Philly Sports Hall of Fame was looking for volunteers. She ran it by him. He submitted it. And next thing you know, he got involved. And then subsequent to that, he asked me if I was interested in getting involved. And I thought it would be fun, especially because I haven't lived in the Philly area for about 17 years. My job took me up to the New York and actually Connecticut area in 2007. So not only am I still very much a hardcore Philly sports fan, but I am doing it in enemy territory because where I live, it's a lot of New York fans, it's Boston fans, it's people from all over. So that's been an interesting part of my fandom experience.
Very cool. Well, hey, Jeff, we mentioned the ballot.
Yeah,
it's full. You have to, you can't pick up 15 votes, but he plays 15 votes. How do you guys come up with that list? Because it was very difficult to whittle that thing down to 15.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to understand is the Philly Sports Hall of Fame is really there to represent a lot of different sort of elements of greatness. First off, it can be for athletes who either played in Philly or those who were born in the area and didn't necessarily play there. And then ideally, it's athletes who did both from the area and played. It's a pretty exclusive club, and every year there are new nominees that we consider. And we really look for a crosswalk of sports, both individual, team sports, men, women, college, pros. And then I know we're going to talk a little bit about sort of the legacy as well. So this year, there's some really exciting nominees, some of the ones that jump to the top for me. And we talked about the fact that I'm a hockey guy. So first and foremost for me is Johnny Gaudreau, beyond the fact that from an athletic standpoint, I mean, he is hands down the best hockey player to ever come out of the Philadelphia area. And it's really not even close. And then you think on a very different level about someone like Jimmy Lynam, for example, who, of course, was a player on St. Joe's, then he was a coach at St. Joe's, then he was a coach in the NBA, including the Sixers, then he was a GM, and then a lot of people know him more as a media figure, and then, of course, his daughter, Dee. And then someone like Carli Lloyd, who, of course, was, I'm looking at some of these comments here, I've seen all the Philly sports championships, that's great. Someone like Carli Lloyd, who is from the area and is considered easily top 5 to 10 soccer player of all time, 2-time gold medal winning Olympian, and not just that, but scoring the gold medal winning goal. So she's got quite a reputation as well. And then there are several other nominees as well.
You know, I was looking at the Hall's website the other day, and I didn't know this, but apparently the Hall started in the early 2000s after Frank Fitzpatrick, the great Philadelphia Inquirer columnist, mentioned something about the fact that Philly doesn't have a sports Hall of Fame. Why the heck not? And so, you know, the people at the Hall now said, hey, he's right. And they got on it. So 2003, 2004, they got it all together. They had the first induction ceremony in February of 2004. And man, what an impressive list of first inductees. Chuck Bednarik, Robin Roberts, Steve Van Buren, Joe Frazier, Harry Callis, Sonny Hill. The list goes on and on. The late Paul Aras and Wilt Chamberlain, Connie Mack, Richie Ashburn, Jimmy Fox, Bert Bell, and Bill Tilden. So a very impressive list. Now, a lot of guys impressively have gone in over the last 21, 22 years. But as you said, this year's list of nominees is also quite impressive. I'm going to put that list up right now, and we're going to talk about some of these guys. So you mentioned a couple of them already in Johnny Gaudreau. You mentioned Carli Lloyd. Who else stands out on that list to you, Jeff?
Yeah, the big one for me is LeSean or Shady McCoy. Obviously a very dynamic player with the Eagles and their all-time leading rusher. And the thing that jumps out to me with him is the one specific game, the snow game. I'm forgetting what year it was, but when he was dashing through the snow, I think it was against the Lions. And you can see the Eagles are well represented here with Trey Thomas, with Jon Runyan, and Hugh Douglas. So we've got a lot of those early 2000 players. But then again, you've got such a diversity from the sports perspective. You've got swimming represented. You've got lacrosse, rowing, which again goes back to the fact that it's a nice combination of both individual sports as well as team sports, pro, college, and really everything in between, be those players who played here and or those who were born in the tri-state area.
Well, Jeff, when I went through that list, first thing I did is I sat down and just did the easy picks. We've talked about some of those, but when you have guys like Hugh Douglas, Jon Runyan, Trey Thomas, you know, Art Still, all great NFL players, and they're easy, right? They look like they're easy. But then when you start reading about, can you put that back up again, Chet, just a second? Start reading the bios on like Kate Pearson and Mandy O'Leary and Karen Borby and these female athletes that are all local people that have just done amazing things. I had to go back and start weeding out some of the easy picks and start putting some of these people in here that just have tremendous resumes.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, it goes back to the diversity, and that's something we strive for every year is a cross-representation of sports, men, women, team, individual, and we've got squash here. We've got a lot of different sports represented here, so I agree with you. They're all very impressive in their own rights and in what they accomplished in their careers.
Now, once again, at the top of the show, Bill disclosed the fact that in a moment of weakness a few years ago, President Ken Avalon from the Hall invited Bill and me to be voting members. Not sure why, but we were honored to do so. We do take our duties very seriously. So I'm going to tell you that I voted for 10 names from that newer nominees list, plus 5 names from the heritage list. And for me, well, it was 3 guys that we already discussed. 2 guys, 1 gal. The 3 absolute yes votes for me among the newer nominees were South Jersey soccer legend and Women's World Cup hero Carli Lloyd, Eagles all-time rusher LeSean "Shady" McCoy, and South Jersey hockey star, gone way too soon, Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, they've all got to be locks this year, don't you think, Jeff?
I would think so, for sure. Yeah, we typically induct 15 to 18 athletes every year. So I would agree with you. Those are the 3 that jumped out to me as well. And again, there's plenty of room for everyone else. And you also mentioned we have an annual event where we bring all these nominees together. It's typically in early November at Live Casino. That's where you and I got to meet for the first time. That was my first time ever going to the event. So that was a lot of fun. And it was particularly exciting because it was sort of a Flyer-centric night. I don't know if you remember, but there were 2 tables of former Flyers because several former Orange and Black were nominated or actually put into the Hall of Fame. So that was particularly exciting for me.
Well, I also voted for those 3, and I voted for Jimmy Lynam, who you also mentioned, Jeff, along the way. Now, Chet, do you also have the list of the legacy candidates?
Yeah, and let me just say, I really like the fact that the Hall does honor a handful of legacy candidates every year, men and women who played or coached, I mean, as far back as the early or mid 1900s. I mean, that is pretty cool, I would think, for their surviving relatives all these years later to find out that their, grandfather or grandmother is going into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame.
You look at this list, the same thing. I'll say, when you look at this list, obviously we didn't see many of these or maybe any of them. But if you look at their resumes, there's gold medals spread out throughout this whole entire list, along with a bunch of other tremendous accomplishments.
Yeah, I agree. When I was looking at some of these and just doing some homework, one of the ones that jumped off the page to me was the last one there, Sherry McGee. That's a player from the early 1900s.
Yep.
Certainly not a household name today, to your points, yet someone who was one of the best players in Major League Baseball over 100 years ago. So like you said, it's quite a legacy for the families of these athletes who were honored so far after they were actually performing on the field. So yeah, that's a very cool part of it as well, to have that connectivity to many generations before us.
Sherry McGee was actually the only name from that legacy list that I did recognize, because I've heard him mentioned on, I guess, Phillies broadcast by Richie Ashburn or somebody way back in the day.
Sure.
Sherry McGee was a Phillies outfielder from 1904 to 1914, a Phillies Wall of Famer, and he hit over 300, 5 different seasons, so quite a resume. One other name that I did definitely vote for from the heritage list, Battling Levinsky, because with a name like Battling Levinsky and you're a boxer, you got to get my vote.
How do you not go in with that name? I agree. I totally agree.
Hey, Jeff, you come up with this list of, I don't even know how many names are on here. How do you get nominated, or how do you come up with the committee come up with this group to start to whittle down?
So that's a very exclusive type of process that if I told you, I don't know if I'd be allowed to, that if I told you, I'd have to kill you. No, it is a pretty involved process. And there's essentially a subset of us that work on that committee. And every year there's the opportunity to nominate new athletes. People make recommendations. We take input from the public on maybe athletes that haven't been on the list before that should have been. So it's really a pretty comprehensive process where we're taking guidance from a lot of people to make sure that no stone goes unturned when it comes to making sure that all the people who should be in there at least get the chance to get in there.
Well, Jeff, when are the official inductees for this year going to be announced?
So the process will unfold over the next couple of weeks, and then I believe it's actually in a couple months where we will actually announce who the honorees will be. And that's when the planning process begins for the event, which again is always the first week. It's the first Thursday of November at the Live Casino down in South Philly. So it rolls out over a couple months, and then the people who are going to be inducted have several months to hopefully make plans to be there in person to join us for the special occasion.
It's usually the first Thursday in November. Last year, that happened to be my birthday, November 6th. This year, it'll be November 5th. My birthday will be on Friday if you want to, buy me something.
I will see you there, and we'll have to celebrate a little bit early.
There you go.
Hey, Jeff, for anybody that's watching or anybody in the Philadelphia area that would want to come to the event, it's open to the public, right? You got to buy a ticket, but anybody can come to this, right?
Yeah, it is. And I would highly recommend it. I mean, it was such a cool experience for me last year. And again, I'm a volunteer there. I wish I had known about it years ago because I would have loved to have gone. The last couple of years, Joe DeCamera's been the MC, and he does an amazing job. I think before that, Glenn Macnow used to do it. So you've got some sort of Philly sports and media royalty leading the event. And you're just surrounded by athletes from every sport. And a lot of times, again, Chet, I think of last year, I mean, there were 2 or 3 Flyers who got in. And along with that, so there were so many of their teammates that came to support them. You had people like Mark Howe, you had Brian Propp, you had all these teammates of his.
Paul Holmgren was inducted.
Paul Holmgren was another inductee, yep. So that's really cool too. And you just kind of get to go rub elbows with Philly sports royalty. A lot of volunteers come together to make it happen, and I would definitely recommend it for any Philly sports fan. It's a pretty special night.
Well, Jeff, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us. Fantastic. Hopefully we can do it again, and I don't know what took us so long the first time.
I would love to. Great to be with you guys. Thank you.